Sometimes I'm going to give you a little bit of behind the scenes teaching. A little behind the scenes action. One of the crazy things that goes on here is we develop these books, right? And we looked over the Torah portion, we did that Torah portion a couple times, and we decided that, sometimes it doesn't always match up, or sometimes the themes don't always match up with the thing. So we come up with the idea that we would do our own Torah portions. And somebody was assigned each section, so that the Torah, the writings, the prophets, the epistles, or the Gospels. And so the Torah person was going forward right down, would read the Torah and come up with a theme. And the rest of us would try to match something in our area, which are the prophets. Try to match something in our area that matches the theme. One of the problems is when you read something 6 months ago, you pick out a theme, and it doesn't always make sense 6 months later. In fact, a little story out of school, Aaron come up to me about, 4 or 5 weeks ago, comes up to me at Campuses. What is this theme about? Where did he get this? I said, I don't know, you're the one to pick it. Right? So he was the one to pick that from the theme because of where it came from. The same problem I ran into this week, or a similar problem I ran into this week. The theme was jealousy. So I read through all of the Torah portion, and I read all of the epistles, I read all the prophets, I read everything in there. And the only time the word jealousy, or the act of jealousy, ever came up was once, and that was in Deuteronomy 4, verse 24. So it got me to thinking, and Deborah, she's not here tonight, Deborah said that we did our teaching meeting. I wonder what that word is in Hebrew. That's one of the things I'm going to look up, see what it is in Hebrew. The word in Hebrew that was used in Deuteronomy 4, verse 24 is Canaan. Q-A-N. Q-A-N-N-A. Canaan. So it means jealousy, envy, and zealous. But the unique part about that is it's only used 8 times. That word is only used 8 times in the scriptures. And every time it's used, it's talking about God's jealousy. It's not talking about human jealousy. So there's obviously a difference between the word Canaan and when we're talking about the jealousy of humans. And each part of this is written by different authors, right? Each part of the scriptures is written by different authors at different times, in different cultures, but they all seem to respect that word Canaan as only about the jealousy of God. So none of this other thing. So let's look this thing up. So go to the best source in the world, the internet, right? I Google jealous. And this is what I got. This is what I got. And some of you would expect, number 1, feeling it or showing envy for someone for their achievements and advantages. That's understood. 2, feeling or showing suspicions of someone's unfaithfulness in a relationship. 3, fiercely protective and vigilant of one's rightful possessions. But the 4th one is the one that surprised me. That Google says can also mean of God demanding faithfulness and exclusive worship. So I was kind of impressed with that, because normally you don't find a lot about positive about God on Google. So that was pretty interesting. So I started to look through it, and there's probably 50 stories in the Bible that deal with jealousy between somebody and something. So I thought we would go through some of them tonight, take a look at them, and see how they might match up with what we do in life, right? How we live. So the first one is Cain and Abel. Everybody knows the story, right? So Cain and Abel both did their offerings. Abel's is accepted. Cain's is not accepted. Cain ends up killing Abel, and we assume that Cain killed Abel because he was jealous of the offering that Abel did. actually even another theory that there was actually a triplets involved. One of them was a girl. The text in verses 1 and 2 doesn't specify that. It does sort of agree with the twins theory, because he said that basically that Eve had Cain, and then she had Abel. There's a pretty time period in between or anything like that. So that's where the assumption of the brothers, the twins come in. But the thing that I thought was really interesting was when I read the NIV and a couple of the other more modern translations, it says that Cain led Abel to the field and killed him. But when you go into the literal translations of the Bible, books that are, the translations that are more literal, it doesn't say anything about Cain leading Abel into the field. It just says they're in the field. So some theorize that because Cain wasn't killed by God for killing Abel, which is what you would think would happen, that maybe there was more to the story that we're not reading. In fact, some theories say that it's more about, instead of being about jealousy of the offering, it was more about a jealousy of Abel sort of trying to take over the role of the firstborn brother, and that's what the battle came down. But we don't know. Nobody knows. Nobody knows exactly how it happened. Anything about it. All we have is a lot of theories. We do know that at some point Cain killed Abel, and God sent Cain out with a marking of some sort so that other people wouldn't kill him. The next one in the line is Hagar and Sarah. Now, this is a story of all stories. I mean, this could be a different magazine we're reading besides the Bible. This story makes us understand that God has a sense of humor. He must be out there laughing and saying, you know, these people are just like puppies banging their head over the glass door, and they just keep on trying to get through that door, and they can't get through it. Because the people are just so dumb. I mean, stop and think about it. Rustin, your lovely wife tells you to go sleep with her maid, and you don't know it. It's a trap, people. Anybody should notice that. How dumb can you be to think that was going to work out okay? It just can't, right? So, chapter 16. That's what happens in chapter 16, verse 2. So she said to Abram, the Lord has kept me from having children. Go, sleep with my maidservant. Perhaps I can build a family for her. Abram agreed with Sarah. I only took to verse 5 for him to realize he had gotten done wrong here. Verse 5, he says this, Sarah says to Abram, you're responsible for the wrong I am suffering. So it's already his fault, right? She came up with the idea, but it's his fault. That's the point. So, we say, how does this reflect on your Tuesday? Anybody that's young, you young people, when you go out and get married, if your wife says to you, I know it's our anniversary, but don't worry about it. Fill that out with the guys. Don't listen, okay? No attention. It's a trap, okay? Same kind of trap this is, right? So Abraham, so needless to say, she gets pregnant, right? Hagar gets pregnant. And there's some messages between Hagar and Sarah, right? So Sarai says to Abraham, you're responsible for the wrong I am suffering. I put my servant in your arms, and now she knows she is pregnant, and she despises me, and the Lord judge between me and you. Abraham's response was, your servant is in your hands. Do what you want to with it, right? So Sarah mistreated her and kicked her out of town, right? Or she fled, right? So it goes on. Hagar leaves, angel of God sends her back. Isaac is ultimately born, weaned from Sarah. Sarah demands Hagar and Ishmael be thrown out. After consulting God, Abraham throws them out. Angels save Hagar again and Ishmael. Ishmael, as promised by God, eventually becomes the father of 12 princes and a daughter who ends up marrying Esau. Oddly enough, there's no evidence that Esau and Ishmael had any issues with essentials needed for a contemptuous relationship. Esau is a man's man, right? He's out there, he's a hunter. He's, as the text specifies, describes him as a skillful hunter and a man of the open country. And Jacob in verse 28 is described as a quiet man staying among the tents. So Esau is favored by Isaac, and Jacob is favored by Rebekah. Two of these couldn't even get along in a moment. They were fighting on their way to home before they ever got out. This was destined to be a problem. It appears that Jacob was favored by God because the story is the story of his own. Of course, this book was written by the descendants of Jacob, so we aren't getting the other side of the story. The text does allude to the fact that Esau's descendants also became a great nation as promised by God. So God went ahead. Esau still had the whole protection of God. In fact, in this portion of the Torah, it talks about the Israelites going through Esau's land, and God says, "Don't cause a war with him. Don't. I gave that land to Esau. That's it. Don't cause any problem." So Esau was very well protected. Ultimately, Jacob and Esau do reconcile. In Genesis 32, where Jacob, who is now Israel, humbles himself to his older brother and they embrace. So it's pretty cool that all the deception and everything going on with Jacob being deceptive and everything that he did. And then at the end, he does realize, at least it appears to me, he realizes how wrong he was. And he's the one that humbled himself to Esau to mend the relationship. Now, the next one is Rachel and Leah. Now, I'm going to play this video because I can talk about these two all night long, but this lady here that made this video is great. So, we'll just watch this video for a second and we'll turn that up.
Continuing on the road, Jacob came to a well. He saw a maiden approaching and discovered from the locals that she was his cousin Rachel. Possessed by superhuman strength, Jacob rolled the stone cover off the well, a job which usually took many men, and he watered Rachel's sheep. Then he kissed her, cried, and told her they were related. Rachel ran to tell her father, Laban. Jacob agreed to work 7 years for Laban in exchange for Rachel's hand in marriage. But at the wedding, Laban, who was a notorious trickster, substituted his older daughter, Leah, as Jacob's bride. Laban explained that the local custom was to marry off the older daughter first, but that Rachel was still available for another 7 years of labor. But Jacob was a man in love, so he agreed. 14 years may seem like a lot for 2 wives, but he also received 2 bonus companions. With Leah, her handmaiden Zilpah, and with Rachel, her handmaiden Bilhah. Having sisters as wives might sound convenient, but as the story clearly illustrates, it quite literally breeds problems. Leah begins to bear children, and Rachel develops extreme jealousy. So continues an epic sisterly competition, not just over affection from the same man, but over fertility. Welcome to Jacob's marital life. Jacob loved Rachel more, so God gave Leah 4 children, Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah. Meantime, Rachel, who wasn't getting pregnant, decided to give her handmaiden Bilhah to Jacob to have children on her behalf. Bilhah bore Jacob 2 sons, Dan and Naphtali, who were named by Rachel. But it didn't end there. The pregnancy wars continued. When Leah realized she wasn't having more children, she gave her handmaiden Zilpah to Jacob to become pregnant on her behalf, resulting in the births of Gad and Asher, named and claimed by Leah. Team Leah, 6. Team Rachel, 2. Sort of. Leah then becomes pregnant again, bearing Issachar and Zebulun, number 7 and 8 if you're still counting. Then she bears a daughter, Dinah, who doesn't count as one of the sons of Jacob for obvious reasons. Finally, Rachel bears a son and names actions and the actions of his sons in the Torah portions ahead. The Jewish people arrive in Egypt, and it is the exodus from Egypt which creates a desire to move from spiritual or literal exile to a whole land of equality and freedom. As Jacob learned, sometimes you have to leave home to find home.
Well, I thought that was a great one. Although I really think it should be renamed. Instead of the Real Housewives of Canaan, it sort of sounds like West Virginia. I'm sure they're talking West Virginia. Perfect example, right? So, you later now? I couldn't wait for the sound to get that. Well, from there we go on to Joseph and his brothers, right? That's what this all started at, right? So after a story, after watching that story or reading the story that went on there, what chance did this family have to start out? I mean, they were done right from the beginning. And to top it off, Joseph is obviously the favorite son. Anyone who's grown up with siblings, anyone who's grown up with brothers and sisters, especially young, when there's somewhat of an age gap, there is I don't care how great the family is, or how Christian you are, they are still going to be rivalries, and there's still going to be jealousies. The younger ones are going to be upset because they can't do everything the older ones are doing. And the older ones are going to be upset because the younger ones are getting ready to stop dating. Right? So this is normal stuff. So Joseph hanging around. He's hanging around, he's going to his brothers, he's always there, he's daddy's favorite, right? He's wearing his stupid coat, right? The guy was looking for a woman, right? I mean, come on, you gotta admit it. I mean, you might want to look at yourself. Now, they did go a little bit overboard by throwing him in the ditch and selling him off. But you have to think about it this way. If the brothers would have never sold him off, then he would have never became the second commandment. So it's obviously some sort of anger, right? Of course, you can take that to the other step and say, if he would have never became the second in command in Egypt, then the Israelites would have stayed in Canaan where they were supposed to be, and we would have never had the whole Exodus deal. We would never had to go to slavery. So it could go either way. Then we turn to Moses and his siblings. This is more like, what went on here was really weird. It was more like today. It starts out with verse 1 in chapter 12. It's a very short chapter. In fact, I'll find somebody read that. Russ, you want to read that for me? Numbers 12, verse 1. Right now, just verse 1. Yeah, go first.
Now the Lord looked upon us in the wilderness of Sinai, in the tabernacle meetings, on the first day of the second month, in the second year.
Numbers, I'm sorry, chapter 12. Numbers 12. I was a little lost there for a minute.
Sorry.
Numbers.
Miriam and Aaron spoke against Moses because of the Ethiopian woman whom he had married, or he had married an Ethiopian woman.
You must read, what is that, NIV?
No,
New King James? In most of the translations, it uses the word Cushite, right? Which there's some debate about what that actually meant. There's some debate that means that is an Ethiopian that was a black woman. She came from the Ethiopian area. The other argument is that it means, the other definition for it means that she was a beautiful woman. That she was, they're all appearance with no substance. And it battles back and forth about this. Because you've got, we know the wife that we know about came from Midian, right? We talked the whole story in there. It doesn't say anything about Ethiopia or anyplace else. Now, some speculate that this was his second wife. That Moses,
do not let her be as one dead, whose flesh is half consumed when he comes out of the mother's womb. So Moses cried out to the Lord, saying, Please heal her, O God, I pray. And then the Lord said to Moses, If her father had but spit in her face, would she not be shamed 7 days? Let her be shut out of the camp 7 days, and afterward she may be received again. So Miriam was shut out of the camp 7 days, and the people did not journey till Miriam was brought in again. And afterward the people moved from Hazarah and camped in the wilderness of Paran.
Okay, so there's a lot of things, a lot of interesting pieces to the story. Number one, it starts out that they're bad-mouthing Moses because of his wife. And then that's the end of it. We never hear anything about that again. Now we're on to what really is the problem, right? We sort of do that in our life, too. If we're jealous or we're angry about somebody, and we want to get everybody on our side, a lot of times we even know, although it's hard for us to admit, that we're not completely legitimate with our complaint. So we pick out something that everybody else can see that is wrong with this person, right? And we concentrate on that, and that's what Aaron and Miriam did. So everybody could see whether she was an Ethiopian woman or she was a beautiful woman, beauty and no substance, or whatever. They chose that to talk bad about Moses to the group rather than tell them what their real problem was. Right? So that I thought was interesting. The other thing that was interesting is once again, here is where Moses self-proclaims himself to be the most humble man on earth. Right? That was pretty cool. The other cool part is that God distinguishes Moses from prophets. He says, for prophets, he gives them visions in their shape, he does this, he does that, but for Moses, he does it face to face. So, that made me stop and rethink about calling Moses as a prophet. I always considered him a prophet, right? But maybe he was something more. Just like the one that Paul was something more, right? So that became interesting. The other thing I thought was interesting is, once again, Aaron gets away with crap, right? Back in the Exodus story, right? He's the one who was in charge. These people do this stuff, God kills a bunch of people, and Aaron just walks away free, right? Him and Miriam were starting all this crap. Miriam gets turned into a leper. He just walks away clear. There's a lot of theories out there about how it's funny because I'm going to get too off track here. Most of Judaism says that the 5 books of the Torah were written by Moses. But they also say that there's a possibility that the authors of Numbers and of Exodus didn't want to make Aaron in a bad light because he was a priest. He was a priest. Right? He was head. They didn't want to show God punishing him as a priest. I don't know why, but it does seem odd. He gets away with everything, and everybody else gets punished. So then we go on to Mary. Deborah talked about this story in great length, and she did a great job with it. This is a very short story, and at least I sort of just skimmed over it before and didn't pay a lot of attention to the depth until I saw some things that I didn't feel before about the story, so I thought that was very good. But somebody knows the story very Martha. Okay, so Jesus is going to town to Yeshua, going to town. He stops at Martha's house. Martha is being the perfect Jew, right? Hospitality is what this is all about. She's going to work. She's getting everybody what they need and just working her butt off. Mary pops her feet, pops down there next to Jesus' feet, and just sits there. Well, you just say Mary's upset about this. And Mary goes, I mean, she doesn't go to, I mean, Martha doesn't go to Mary, she goes to Jesus, right? And says, hey, what's the scoop here? How come she's sitting here? And Jesus says, she's doing what she's supposed to do, right? Sometimes I think we get the wrong message from that. Sometimes I even think it goes over the battle sometimes. Faith versus deeds. One working and checking all the boxes, and the other one is just worshiping Jesus, right? So, and we think one's wrong and the other is right. But it doesn't say that. Nowhere in there does it say that Martha is doing anything wrong. It just says that Mary is doing what Mary's supposed to do. So I think sometimes we misinterpret. As if Mary has done something wrong, or Martha has done something wrong by doing all that work, but yet hospitality is, at that time, and hopefully it still is, but at that time, that was key. That was key. I mean, you had, for Hebrews, being hospitable was almost a requirement. In fact, we told this before that some of the rabbis say that the destruction of Sodom, not Sodom, of Sodom was not because of the stuff that was going on in the streets, but because the people from Sodom were inhospitable to God's kingdoms. That hospitality is the key. So if you read this and think Martha was doing wrong, you need to really look at it and think about what's going on. Then we have the vineyard of the pearl. I'm sorry, prodigal son. This is, again, one that can be misinterpreted the same way as Martha and Mary's story. So you have the prodigal son, you had the one brother that just had no respect for anything. Couldn't wait for his dad to die to get his inheritance. Talked to him and gave him to her now, goes out and causes all kinds of trouble, gets into all kinds of jams and everything else. Comes back and begs for forgiveness. Dad throws her a party, and the one did all the work the whole time in the oil. And I said, hey, what's the deal here? You know, I put my time in, I did everything I was supposed to do, right? So sometimes we assume from that story that the one that was the one that ran off and come back was the good guy here, right? That because again, the brother that stayed was too legalistic. He was too, checking the boxes. He didn't have the heart or the faith for this. But the story isn't about him. And the story isn't even about the brother that went away. The story is about the father. And when the brother came back and showed shame, the father showed mercy, showed grace. And that great statement from the unit, without no shame, there is no grace. So he showed shame, he got the grace. And that's what the story is about, how we should act when people that have wronged us repent or show shame and are looking for forgiveness. It's not about the brother, that the old brother was doing something, but he was too legalistic and he just stayed with guns, or even about the brother that ran off. It's about the father. And that's the lesson I got. Then we go into the vineyard, parable of the vineyard. And this one I can identify with more than any of the others. I don't know, for anybody that doesn't know the story. Basically, the vineyard owner went out and hired somebody and said, I'll give you so many, I forget the actual, but it said, I'll give you a shekel to work on my vineyard. And I said, yeah, it sounds good to me. That works. And then a couple hours later, he goes gets another guy and brings him into work. And then a couple hours later, he goes gets another guy and brings him into work. And even right towards the end of the day, goes get another guy in there. And in the end, he paid them all a shekel. And everybody down one at a time and said, what days do you want to work? And they tell me. And I go to you and say, what days would you like to work? And you tell me. And I said, what days would you like to work? And I tell you. And I give everybody exactly what they want. And I put the schedule on the board. First thing you do is go, well, how come she's got this day off? I wanted that day. That's not what you said, right? So everybody was so worried about what everybody else was doing and not paying attention to the deal that they made. That's what story is. The deal you make is the deal you need to pay attention to, right? That there was constantly battles going on. So I got to the point where I wouldn't post a schedule. I'll give you your schedule. I'll give you your schedule. And I just wouldn't post a schedule. Because we often spend too much time worrying about what everybody else is doing instead of what we should be doing. Had a nice example this afternoon about Finley. The perfect example. A lot of us would have walked by there and said, wonder whose job that was and how come they didn't get that done, you know? And I might do the math and say, hey, Walt's not doing his job. He's supposed to be over there fixing that thing. And he hasn't fixed it yet. That's not what Linda did. And he said, I have ownership of this, and this is my responsibility. I'm going to go ahead and take care of it. And he didn't even worry about his job. Did he come to you and ask you who's in charge of that? No, right? That wasn't even part of the mindset. And most jealousies and most things that we get tied up in like this are from us worrying about things that are none of our business. Because most of the time we don't have any idea what's really going on. You can sit here, you can come by here 4 or 5 times a week and that's not going to be a job. Well, the truck's not going to be there. Frustrating. Don't these people ever work? I come by there and they're never there. Right? But nobody knows that Matt might be out here weeding or over at the next daycare, running crews trying to get things painted or meeting with people or all the things that he does. You don't see that. You don't see. You see only what you see, and you make up your own mind, or we make up our own minds, whether somebody is doing their job or not doing their job. We have absolutely no clue what their job is. And we do that with everything. We want to know why this person has a nicer car than we do. Take into account that they might work harder, might save money more, or that they might be overextended and they shouldn't have a car anyway. Right? We don't take into any of that into account. All we want to know is why, how unfair it is that this person's got something and I don't have it. We don't want any of the effort in. We just want to blame the situation and say, why are they being got a better life than I do? And the worst part about that is probably more than 50% of the time, they don't have a better life than you. It just may appear that way from the distance that you are. You couldn't last a day in their shoes. It's that thing that they say about walk a mile in my shoes and see where you're at. And the answer to that is spend 5 minutes in my head and see how it works out for you. Right? Not going to work out well. But jealousies are, I think it's almost like free will. Because it's all through the text. There must be, like I said, I don't know, there's 50 incidences and stories about different types of jealousies. So God obviously knows that this is a defect. And he was going to use that to make us better people. And he uses it to talk about it and for us to see how these people reacted and correct ourselves on how we should react. I don't know how many times, back before I started this new life of mine, jealousy was a big deal for me. I might not be the type of jealousy that I'm worried my wife will cheat on me or something like that. But when I covet things that other people have, and I want things better than they have, it's all a form of jealousy. Jealousy creates coveting, coveting creates anger, because you're never going to get everything, because every time you get something, you're going to want something better, right? That creates anger. Jesus says anger leads to murder, right? So it's definitely a path, it's a dangerous path. You're down nothing good comes out. So, you might have to go to Slidell, so.
All your fault.
Any questions? Before we wrap it up? You got a P or do you want a question?
I was just wondering, how would that connect? I feel like some people describe God as a jealous God, or I'm not sure, where it says that specifically, but just how that would connect with this as well.
Well, I think if you go back to that definition, that's what I thought was cool about that definition that we had. You gave the second slide. Yeah. One of the definitions of Torah, or how it's concept, of God demanding faithfulness and exclusive worship. And they don't use that word anywhere else unless they're talking about God. That word comment. It's only about that. It's not about the human jealousy that we deal with every day. But he's just